Hey guys, so in this video we are going to talk about how to measure a programmer's productivity. So let's get into it. Now it was a great question that I had from a subscriber of mine, and it is probably the most disappointing answer in the world that I can give to such a great question. And I'm going to give you the question that, or rather the answer that is the only sane one to give. It depends. And I will go one further and I will say to this specific question, there is no answer. I will argue to you right here, right now, in front of all these nice people, that you and I and all the other people in the world have absolutely no idea how to measure productivity of a programmer. And the reason why we have no way of doing that is because each and every situation, each and every single thing that you do is going to be different. Unless you have literally the exact same coding challenge, and this is why you may suspect why coding challenges are so popular in a job interview. The problem with the coding challenge is that they don't actually represent what it is that you are looking for. Because you're not looking for, I've met tons of people who have this mindset that, they talk about algorithms, they're interested in algorithms and fancy code and all of that great stuff. And then they manage to be able to implement a binary search algorithm or an insertion sort or bubble sort or whatever they want to call it, right? But they completely fail at the profession because programming is a lot more complicated than a single algorithm. And I see a lot of computer scientists who focus really hard on that, who are great at a single algorithm, and I've seen them write software and it looks absolutely horrible. Now this is not a rule, of course, but it's kind of an indicator. So we can't really go about having these prepared, kind of controlled environments where you do a code test and then you measure how fast somebody solves it. Can we go by efficiency? Well, that's also a tricky one because it also depends on the problem at hand. Some problems are big, some problems are small. Some problems are really big, but you don't understand that they're big, and some seem big, but they're not that big. It's a really, really, really tricky situation to be in. You can go by stories as you are working. When I'm working on something and there's something that is unexpected that happens, should that impact my review? Because if my boss only cares about the time it takes for me to finish a task, what happens when I create an implementation that's really, really shitty and the system starts moving slower? That's not something that's going to be on my review board, my stats as someone working at the company. What happens if there's a lot of bugs? Is my boss going to track the amount of bugs that my story is producing? Because if we're measuring by time, then logically the assumption is that my implementation works absolutely flawlessly and there are never any bugs related to it. Are we going to measure how much of an impact my implementation is going to have to other people's workflow? Because that's going to be depending on how good I am at what I do. How well somebody else can pick up and start working after I've been working is also going to affect something. Now this is something that is very common in very unexperienced managers or unexperienced companies, where they're happy with the performance of a programmer and the programmer works for a long time. And I've seen this happen many times where the company literally had to rewrite the whole code base. But the issue is that this idea, this inexperience from the company or the manager, has caused a situation where the programmer has just been hacking away, creating absolutely nothing that can be picked up by somebody else. And then when they need somebody else to join the ranks, they can't, because the code base is in such a shamble that nobody apart from the original developer can understand it. How do you measure that? How is that going to be part of whether or not you're productive or not? And then you have people who are extremely slow and methodical, who write a really large amount of unit tests and stuff like that. Is that good? Should we go by quality of the software? Well, that also depends. If you're a small startup and you're hacking away at the prototype and you have some guy or girl who is writing unit tests for every single method and for absolutely everything, you're going to get a very low return on investment from that. Because maybe you're absolutely not sure whether or not you're going to keep this code around. And then this person invests that much time and money into it. That's not great. And then you might have people who produce a very small amount of code, but the code that they are writing requires a lot of research. It requires a lot of insight and so forth. And I've been there as well. Have had days where I literally spent all day researching and investigating and figuring out all the things that I needed to know about the system to write 2 lines of code. That's it. In one entire day, 2 lines of code. And the thing is that that's what it took at that moment for that specific problem to be able to complete the task at hand. So how would my manager rate that? Well, in lines of code and time investment, that's a horrible thing. Do you see? I hope you're starting to see the problem. Now I'm going to give you my take on as to how to measure somebody's productivity or how good a programmer is. And unfortunately, there is no unopinionated way for us humans as stands today to do this. The only way I've ever faced or ever been in contact with that works well is the expert opinion. It's the same idea we had for AI not that long ago, where the idea was that you would have a domain expert train your algorithms. In other words, you would have, if you wanted to create an AI system for shopping or fashion, you would have tons of people who were expert in that field make decisions and create a data set that was large enough for the system to kind of think like they did. And this is the same, I argue that this is the same thing. In order for you to hire really good programmers and know what a really good programmer is, you need to have an expert. This is where a CTO comes in my opinion. A chief technical officer or some type of technical manager. If your company does not have technical people, you will never be able to figure out if you're hiring. It will be very hard for you to figure out how productive or how effective your programmers are. It will be almost all but impossible. Maybe you don't really care. Maybe you just want them to get the job done. Maybe you're a small design firm and you don't really care about long-term sustainability or stuff of that nature. Maybe you're just optimizing for speed and stuff of that nature, and then it doesn't really matter. But if you are looking to do long-term hires, you need a technical expert. Someone who has a gut feeling, somebody who's been in programming for years. And you need a good person, of course, as well, because you can't have someone who colors all of their decisions by their own, by their own definition. They kind of have to have a little bit of an open mind as well. But that's what I've found. It's the best possible way for you to determine how well a programmer performs within any given context. You need someone who's already a lot more experienced and has worked in a lot of different environments, who can just kind of make a judgment call and say, yeah, all things considered, they did this well or that well. Because as I said, each and every situation, each evaluation method has pros and cons, and it's very difficult for you to kind of adjust for the given situation at any given time. That's why it's so good to have a technical expert, somebody with a lot of experience that has this fingertip feeling for, this is about that challenging for a programmer. They should have been doing this in that time or that time and so forth. Or maybe this person is really, really good because this was a really tricky challenge and they solved it in a very simple manner. So gut feeling by an expert, that's my answer. And hopefully you have, when you're recruiting new programmers, somebody in your company who has been working for years and years and years and knows what a good programmer looks like. Have a great day.